Hello, so today I wanted to create a complete tutorial on sounds within Godot. This tutorial is split into 4 main chapters. In chapter 1 we will cover the basics and learn how sounds work in Godot, learning about the audio stream player and learning about audio buses and what they are used for, and just understanding everything you need to know before we move into chapter 2, where we will cover how to add sound effects to our player scene, as in a walking sound and a jump sound. Then in chapter 3 we will cover background audio, and in chapter 4 we will go over how to control different audios through different audio buses with real-time in-game player input. So this is basically an everything to know about sounds here in Godot 4. And real quickly, if you could please subscribe and drop a like to push this tutorial to more aspiring game developers, then it would mean the world. Thanks, and let's begin. So just a quick explanation of how sound works in Godot is, if we look at our scene, we're going to come down here to the file system and we have some different audio. We have background music, player jumping, and a player walking sound effect. But this background music is of course going to be the background music, and for the basics we're going to be messing around with this and just going over all the different options that we're going to have with audio here in Godot. Now what's the main thing is you're going to go up here and we're going to click on the plus and we're going to add in a audio stream player 2D. Now this is going to add in a audio stream player 2D node, of course, and we come over here, we're going to have some different options to go over and learn kind of what things do here with the audio, with the stream player. In the inspector, first of all, we have the stream. What is that? Well, that's going to be the audio file, and this can be changed through text, through code as well. So if you wanted to have a sound effect, maybe you wanted to have a player walking on the grass and a player walking on the snow, well, you'd switch out the player walking sound inside of the code based on what the terrain is, right? But of course, we're going to go over that later when we go over the player and how to create the sound effects inside of the player. But if we go to the stream for now, we can just load in a new audio source. We can drag in our background music here, and we can boom right there, and you're going to see that it's going to be as the stream. Now, volume dB is of course the volume. It's how loud and how just loud it's going to be overall. So background music, maybe you're going to want to have it a little bit down. Maybe you're going to want to have it the sound effects a little up, just depending on however it sounds together, right? You have to play with that. That's something you play with throughout the game to see how it sounds together. We're going to have a pitch scale. We're going to have, is it playing? We're going to have, do you want it to autoplay? Do you want to have it paused? Like just some basic stuff here. And then the bus, right? The bus is going to be, maybe you've heard of an audio bus before. Godot, on their official docs, they state what an audio bus is. And I'm going to read the description for you just so we can kind of have a correct idea of what it is, the exact term. But they say an audio bus, also called an audio channel, can be considered a place that audio is channeled through on the way to playback through a device's speakers. Audio data can be modified and rerouted by an audio bus. So, for example, if you come down here to the bottom and we click on this audio, you're going to see that this is an audio bus layout. This is the basic layout. We're going to have the master, and where is the master going to reroute the audio to? Well, if the audio is coming into the master, which it is over here, then it's going to go to the speakers. But usually you're not going to want to have this because that's not going to be very efficient. You're going to want to come over here and click on add bus, and this bus is going to be, maybe you want to have one bus for your music. The very simple, most simplistic way that we can set up this bus is we can have one for music, and then we can have another bus for the SFX, which is going to be sound effects, right? So now we have 3 audio buses here, and in the description, or in the term description, it said that they reroute it. Well, where do they reroute it to? Well, if you see here, we see the music. If we come over here, this is going to be music. So we can come down here and we can change the bus to music. As you can see, they pop up over here now. Well, this sound, whenever it's played, is going to go into this bus. If we want to add effects to it, well, we can amplify it, we can delay it, we can do different things to it right here inside of this bus. And then we're going to send this to the master, right? And then it's going to play, run it through the master, whatever effects we have. Usually in the master, you're going to want to have no effects at all, but we're going to run it through the master, and then it's going to go to the speakers. Sound effects, the exact same thing. If you want some separate effects on it, usually you're not going to need any of this until you get to a more complex game. But for simplest games, like what we're going to do today, and what you're probably needing audio for, is going to just be the bass, just like this. But you can kind of see that we have sound effects. They're going to go, and they're going to also go to the master. We can send it to the music bus, or we can send it to the master. We're going to want to send it to the master so that the sound effects don't get effects that the music is getting, if that makes sense, right? So it's just kind of like a triangle. We have the music here, the sound effects here, and we're basically sending the audio from the sound effects, sending the audio from the music straight to the speakers. That's basically what we're doing in a more simplistic way. But there is some other stuff that we can do. If we come over here and we click on this background music, it's going to enable a pop-up. If we want it to loop, Then we can click on this enable, and then we can come. So for example, what if I don't want it to loop? Well, or we can unenable it, and we can come down here and we can click re-import. And then if we click on it, you can kind of see that it's not going to loop. Then we have beats per minute. And if we click play, it's going to be super loud. So just a quick warning, but you can kind of see that it's going to end up playing just like that, right? So that's kind of the basics of audio. Of course, there's so much more to know. And that's what we're going to be going over today. And the first step to learning is going to be the sound effects. We're going to add some sound effects to our player. And then we're going to go add background music, just kind of what we did here, but going over a little bit more stuff and how to actually implement background music into your game. And then we're going to go over at the very end how to control your audio, either through a settings menu, through your buttons on a screen, through code, through if anything happens. Maybe you want to enter a new scene and you want this audio to play instead of that audio. Well, that's kind of what we're going to be going over. You're going to know how to do that by the end of this. So stay tuned. But now, first of all, let's take the first step and let's start to learn about this sound effects. Okay, so for sound effects, we're going to, first of all, I'm going to remove this audio stream player from our scene. And we can come up here to the test scene, and I'm going to instance our level scene that we have. And I'm going to also instance our player scene as well. And you can kind of see our player is going to be here. If we click play, I'll show you what we have in our game. But we don't have much. We just have a player who can run around, who can jump, and we don't have anything other than this. So we're going to go in and we're going to add a walking effect, or a walking animate or sound, a walking sound, and then a jumping sound, right? So how are we going to go about this? Well, we have already created our bus layout, as you can see in that little intro that we had about the basics. And that's going to be our universal bus layout, or what we're going to be using for the rest of this video, right? So it was created and it's going to be there. But if we go into our player, what are we going to need for our player? Well, we're actually going to take two audio streams, because we're going to have one for our walking and we're going to have one for our jumping. Now, of course, maybe you want your jumping to sound different if you're on a different terrain, or you want your walking to sound different if you're on a different terrain. Well, you're going to change that within the script, right? So we go up to our player here and we can add in two audio streams. We'll add in one here, and we're going to name this audio stream our audio. I just removed everything that was in here, but it's audio stream player walking. And then we're going to have one more, and this one is going to be audio stream player underscore jumping, just like so. Now we can go to our walking and we can drag in our sound. So our walking sound, we can drag in over here, and you're gonna kind of see, if we click on play and we want to see how that sounds, that's how our walking is going to sound, right? And of course that's going to be a loop, so we can click on loop and we can enable that, and then we can re-import and we can close it. Jumping is not going to be a loop because it's going to be a one-time sound, but this is how it's going to sound. So something like that, right? Which is good. So if we go over here to our jumping and we want to drag in our jumping sound over here, and that's how that's going to look. Now, remember, we created those buses. We have a master, we have music, and we have sound effects. We want to send this into the sound effects because that's what they are. They are sound effects. And we just want to try and keep everything as organized as possible. So is our walking, I don't think our walking, let's see. Okay, so yeah, our walking is still into the master. So now it's in the sound effects. But the rest of everything is going to be done within our script. So if we open up our player script, it's going to be very small, so we can zoom in a lot. But we're going to create some variables, and we're just going to get our audio streams. So this is going to be two onReady variables. And these two onReady variables, maybe we can name one player walking audio stream or something like that, right? And that can be equal to our audio stream walking. And then we can have another one, which is going to be onReady var player, basically the same name, just with jumping audio stream equals our audio stream jumping, just like so. Now we're going to have down here basically where are we going to want to play these sounds. Well, we're going to have to look through our code and see where is best going to be playing our sounds. Well, what's going to be easiest to play? Well, jumping, because all we're going to do is we're going to play it, it's going to stop, and we're going to play it every single time we jump. So it's going to be one line of code to play our jumping sound, right? So that should be fairly simple, right? So, well, it is going to be fairly simple, and we can come down here to the input. If we click on our jump button, we want to jump, right? That's how we jump. Right under it, we can just play our sound. So we can say player jumping audio stream. So we can basically get this audio stream over here, get this the path to this audio stream, and then we can say dot play. And what's that going to do? Well, it's going to play. Now, when we do the walking, of course, it's going to be a little bit more complex because we're going to want it to be on and off based on if we're walking, if we're on the ground, or what's going on, right? So, well, we click on this like this, and then we can come down here to the test scene, and we can click play. Now what's going to happen? Well, if we jump, we now have a sound effect. And that is how easy a sound effect is. But if we get into a different sound effect like walking, well, it's going to be a little bit more complex. Now, when we talk about walking here, I'm going to go over how you can change it based on the terrain and based on what you would have. But really how you would do that, well, let's first create it, then we can go and we can talk about how you change it based on terrain, because that's going to be a little bit more advanced than just creating it. But we can come down here and say if direction. Basically, this is our movement. If we have a direction, which means we have either left or right, then we are moving. So basically inside of this if right here, this is how we move. So if we're moving, this means we're moving here. Well, let's check if we are on the floor. So if is on the floor, then we want to play the sound, right? Because if we're moving and we're on the ground, then that means our player is walking on the grass. So we can say if is on floor, then we can say if not player audio stream walking dot playing. So if it's not already playing, then we want player walking audio stream dot play. Then we want to start it, right? And what this is going to do is it's not going to keep restarting it over and over and over, because for example, if we did not have this, I'll show you. So if we take this away and we go over here and we say if is on floor, then what's going to happen? Well, if we click play, really you can kind of see how you can hear the grass now, right? You can hear it, and it's never going to stop. It's kind of opposite now. And the reason it's opposite is because we have our else statement. So now it's playing when we don't want it to play, but it's not playing when we want it to play. So if we put this here, this if statement here, it's going to check if we're on the ground and we're moving, if it is not already playing. So if it's not playing, then it's going to start it. So when we start the game, it's not going to be playing. So if we click play and we land, it's not playing, right? If we walk, it's playing. But the thing is, it doesn't stop now. So how are we going to stop the animation? Well, we can come down here into our else statement. This is where we stop the player's speed. And we can just say player walking audio stream dot stop, right? So basically, every time we stop moving, it's going to stop the audio stream. And every time that we're on the ground and we're walking for the first time, right? Because our audio stream is going to have been stopped. It's going to say, okay, it's not playing. It's not already playing. So let's start it again, right? So it's going to keep restarting it every time we hit the ground. So if we walk, play it, then it's going to stop it. It's going to play it. It's going to stop it. It's going to play it. It's going to stop it. It's going to play it. It's going to stop it. If we jump, everything works on top of each other, just like that, and it looks pretty good. So that's sound effects for you, and that is working sound effects. And that's kind of all there is to go over with sound effects, but I want to go over the thing with the terrain real quick. So how would you do that? Well, you see that these have paths down here. We can say over here, we can say an onReady variable, and we can preload it. So we can say a preload variable, but for now we can just kind of go over the basics. I'm not going to preload it because we're not actually going to use it, but we can say var equals whatever it may be. So I mean, I guess we could do these down here. Maybe you'd want to do them down here. Down here in the physics process. Okay, so for this, you'd want a different function. You'd want a different function for sure. You'd want to say like play sound function or update sound function, but I'm just going to do it here for now. We can say variable equals load, and then basically our path. So we can say walking. Let's say this here, or player var player grass walking sound, something like this, right? Let's say this is our grass walking sound. Well, that's how we're going to end up loading it in. And because that is our grass walking sound, we end up having 2 parentheses around both sides, which is not exactly what we want, but kind of like this. And then we're going to have another one, of course. We're going to have var player snow walking sound equals load, and then the path. So maybe let's say the jumping, for example, our jumping is going to be our snow. But you can kind of see how this is going to be 2 completely different audio files. So this is going to be your snow file here, and your other one, your grass. So down here, instead of saying player walking audio stream, we would have to say, okay, so if we're on the floor and we're moving and we haven't started playing, well, right before we play it, then we can say something like player walking audio stream dot stream equals whatever variable we may have. So for example, player grass walking sound, and then it's going to be equal to the grass if we're on the grass, right? But somewhere before you play this, you'd have to know, okay, what terrain are we on, right? But this is how you would do this. And then if we click play, you're going to see that this should theoretically work the exact same way that it already has been working, because we are passing through our grass sound. If we were to go over here and we were to say player snow sound, what's this going to do? Well, it's going to end up playing our jumping sound on a loop, which is not going to sound very good to the ears, but it works, right? So that's how it works, and that is how we pass through two different sounds, because we can change the stream of the audio within the code. But that's sound effects. Now let's go into creating a background sound, and then let's go into how you can control different sounds like background sounds or sound effects or any type of sound through code, through UI, through controls and stuff like that. So for now, let's get into background sound and learn about background sound. Okay, so now for background sounds, how are we going to go about this? Well, we can go into our level scene now, because we were in our player scene for the player effects, but now let's go into our level scene, and we're going to go and we're going to add what we added to every other thing, an audio stream player. And we can rename this audio stream player, and we can just say something like BG music, something like that. It's our background music. And over here in the stream, you're going to see everything's going to pop up exactly how we want it to. And we can drag in our background music, but first let's click on our background music and let's make sure it's a loop. So it's not a loop, so that's why we're doing this. And we can click on enable so we can make sure it's a loop, and then we can come down here and we can click re-import, and now you're going to see that that is a loop, and it's going to loop whenever we play it within the scene. So we can drag this over here and we can add it to the stream now. And of course we have all this other stuff. We can say autoplay and all this stuff, but I think we can autoplay. I mean, we can autoplay it, but we're going to end up in the code doing something else, and we're going to check based on a variable, so we can change it from settings later, right? So we're for now not going to autoplay, but you could autoplay it, right, just for background music and make everything a lot more simpler. But the bus is going to be music, because this is music. It's not a sound effect, and it's not anything else. It's music, so we're going to put that into music. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to go to level 1. We're going to create a brand new script, our level 1 script, and it's going to be a blank script. Now we're going to create two variables. One is going to be an onReady variable, and that's just going to get the path. So we can say music audio stream BG, right? And we can say it is our audio stream background music, and then we're going to have one more variable, and this variable is going to just check if our background music is on. So background music on equals, for now, true, because we want it to be equal to true, and we want it to be on when we start the game, right? But we can come down here into the ready function, and we can basically remove this. And then down here in the process function, we're going to want to make sure, or we're going to update our music. So update music status, just like this. And we can come down here and create a variable with this exact name. We can say function update music status. What do we want to happen within this function? Well, we can say something like if our background music is on, right? So if our background music is on, then what do we want to happen? Well, we're going to kind of do what we did with the player, and we're going to check if it's already playing. So if our music audio stream background dot playing is equal to is equal to false with a little mark there. So if it's equal to false, then we want to say, okay, music audio stream background dot play, and then here else, which is if our background music is off. So if it's equal to false, I mean yeah, so this has to be back one. So if our background music is equal to false, then what do we want to happen? Well, we want to have our music audio stream dot background to stop, because we don't want our background music to be playing if our music status, if our background music is switched on the off mode within our settings or within any of our controls, wherever we have it in the game, right? Now again, this is our level 1 scene. So let's say you walk into level 1. This is the music you want to have. Maybe you want to have a different music for level 2, where you just have a different setup just like this. Copy and paste it into all your different scenes. Maybe you could have your own audio script just to customize it even more and to make it more modular, but that's not what this video is, because that's just coding. That's not really anything to do with the audio streams. But you can kind of see that this is, like I mentioned earlier, this is going to be very loud. So we can come over here to the decibels and we can make this about -20. It's going to make it a little quieter. Maybe we're going to need it even more quieter than that. If we play on level 1, what's going to happen? You're going to see we have music, right? We're going to have music behind our game, and that is going to be very, very good. Now, of course, our player's not here because we're playing the level 1 scene and we're not playing the test scene. But if we go over here and we click on the test scene, we click on play, you're going to see that we have our player. The sound effects and the music play on top of each other. We click on jump, and everything works just as it should. And that's kind of how music works. So the background music, of course, like you just saw, very, very, very simple. But how do you control this music? What if you wanted to have a settings menu? What if you wanted to have it change based on if it was raining or if it was storming? I mean, if it was raining or if it was sunny out in your game, right? If it was night or if it was day, right? How would you change it? Well, you'd have to switch it up. So for example, you can change the stream just like we did with the player right here. We can equal the stream to something based on a different variable. You could do that here with the level based on if it was raining or if it was sunny, right? In your level, you can do the exact same thing. You can kind of run the same system over here, but how would we change it, like with buttons? Like what if we wanted to mute the audio, or what if we wanted to mute just the sound effects, or we wanted to mute just the music? Well, that's kind of where our bus down here is going to come in handy, right? So that's what we're going to go over here in example 4, which is going to be our Godot sound controls and our different functions that we can do with this. Okay, so getting started with UI for our little menu that we're going to create to control the functions and control the different aspects of our sound. We're going to do it by creating just a little control node here within our test scene. Now, usually you're going to want to have a UI canvas layer outside scene so you can instance it within, but we're going to keep it a little simpler here. We're just going to say control node, and we're going to name this our menu, which is going to be our setting menu. And what this menu is going to consist of, if we open this up, we can say something like a color rect, and this color rect is going to just be our background. We can bring it down here a little bit, and we can set the color to more of a darker gray. Now we can go up here and we can add a vertical, or we can add a container, and this is going to be a vertical box container, and this vertical box container is going to consist of 2 labels. Let's first name this container to be our text box container. And it's going to be 2 labels. One label is going to be for our background text, which is going to be background music, just like so. And we can rename this label to something like BG text. And then we can add another label. This label is going to be SFX text for our sound effects. And we can make this text to be something like sound effect audio, just like that. We can go to our text box container. We can come down here to our layout, our transform, and we can scale this to maybe like 0.3, pretty low. And then we can go up here, lock the children, so we can move it down to where we want it here in our little menu down there. So that looks good. Now, what are we going to need? Well, we're going to need 2 buttons, because we're going to need a button to turn it on and a button to turn it off. Okay, so and then for our buttons, we're going to come up here and we're going to add an animated sprite. Now I'm going to have to go about this a bit weird because we have a huge sprite sheet, of course. So if we open up this animated sprite, we can go over here, create animations, and we can say that we're going to have obviously a muted animation. And this muted animation is going to be horizontal 12, vertical 12, and if we zoom in, this is our muted animation. And then we're going to have one more, which is going to be our unmuted animation. And this unmuted animation is going to end up being 12, 12, and it's going to be this animation there, right? So you can kind of see our 2. So unmuted, muted, unmuted, muted. Now, on this animated sprite, we're going to add a button under it. And this button we can resize to fit the same size. We can rename this animated sprite. We can name this button here our background button, and we can name this animated sprite. Here our background button sprite. And we can lock the children. We can bring this down here a little bit. We can make it whatever size we want it to be to match it exactly how we want it to. And if we go down here to our button, we can come down here to theme overrides, styles, and we can set the normal style to be an empty box so we can see it clear and perfectly bright, just like that. If we click on the play on the scene, you're gonna see how this works down here. Now it's gonna come up with a bunch of different stuff. It's gonna hover it and everything like that, which we don't want. So to fix that, we can go into our button here. We can say hover, empty, and we can basically make all these here empty, just like that. Now if we click play, you're gonna see that nothing happens with the button, but we can click it. So how are we going to do changing it? But that's going to end up happening in the script by us changing it back and forth, right, based on the different animations. So we can go and we can just copy this sprite, we can paste it under the settings, we can bring it down a little bit to here, and we can rename this to our SFX button sprite, just like that. Now that is going to be our little basic UI menu down here in the bottom, and we can change this up, of course, and that's what we're going to do. But we're not going to change it up, but we're going to use this. But we're going to go into text now, and we're going to work on how to create the changing of the text or the changing of the code that's going to end up turning on and off the audio for the background and the sound effects by using our different audio buses down here, right? So let's get into that now by creating a script on top of our settings menu here. Okay, so inside of this script, we can go up here and we can create two new variables. And these variables are going to be the way that we get our buses down here, right? So we want to get the music and the SFX, or the SFX, right? So we can end up changing the muting, and we can end up changing the mute status of these. So you see this little M here? That's a mute. That's a mute, right? So that means it's muted. But how do we change that from the code? Well, to do that, we have to get the ID, and then we can end up going to the audio server, and we can set that bus's mute to whatever we want to set it to. Right, so we can start off by creating a onReady variable. And this onReady variable is going to be for the background button sprite. This is just going to be so we can grab the BG button sprite, just like that. And then we want to also do this for the other button that we do have, so we can say SFX, and we can say SFX here. But okay, so to get our buses, what do we want to do? Well, we want to say onReady var, and then we want to say that these are going to be the IDs that we need to get. So we can say for our music bus ID, we can say music bus ID, and that can be we have to get to the audio server. So we can say audio server dot get bus index, and then we can get whatever the name of that is, right? So we have music. Now we can copy this, we can paste it, and we can say that we need one more for the SFX, and the name of that is FSX, all caps, just like so. Okay, so that is going to look good. Now if we come down here, let me kind of move this down so we can see what's going on. But we're going to have to first of all change the way that the sprite looks. That's why we're getting the sprite, and that's why we're not getting the button. So first of all, in the ready function, what are we going to want to do? Well, everything's going to be wanted to set to unmuted, because that's what it's going to be. The game starts off as everything is going to be playing, so we can say button sprite dot play, and we can say unmuted, just like so. And then same for the other button that we do have, so SFX, just like that. Now we can go to our buttons down here, and we can get node, and we can get the press signal and send it to our menu. And we almost misnamed this button. This should be a SFX there, and we can send this button up here as well. Now we sent that to the complete wrong thing. Okay, we got to send this to the settings menu here. Now in here, we're going to do a little thing where we can swap it based on what it is. So if it's currently muted, then what do we want to do? Well, we can say if, where am I? Okay, we do not want to be up here. We can remove that, and we can go down here, and we can say if background button sprite dot animation, so we can check what animation is currently on, is equal to muted. So if the animation is muted, that means the game is muted. Then we want background color, or we want the background sprite, and we want to play the unmuted. And what happens if we want to unmute it? Well, we want to get our audio server dot set bus mute to this is our background music, so we can say music bus ID, and we want it to be false. We want the mute to be false. We don't want it to be muted, so that's why we're gonna say false. Okay, and then we can come down here because that's gonna basically unmute it. Then we can go to else, and we can say bg background sprite dot play muted. So basically, if we are not equal to muted, then we want to end up muting it, and to mute it, we'll say audio server dot set bus mute to equal the music bus ID, and we want it to be true because we do want it to be muted. Now we can copy this because this is going to be almost an exact duplicate down here, except for the name. We just want to change out all of these names from background to SFX everywhere that we can. Down here in the UI, in the ID as well, just like that. Okay, so now what we're going to want to do is we can play the game and everything should technically work, but I did notice some changes just a minute ago before I ended up doing this. Is if we mute the background, it's not going to mute, and you can kind of see that we're walking. If we mute the sound, it mutes the background music, and it also mutes the sound, but the jump is muted. But if we undo the background, the jump goes. So we have everything mixed around, very, very weird, and it's not going through the correct bus that it should go through. So if we go to our player scene and we go to the walk, we go to inspector, you can kind of see that it is going through the SFX, which it should. The jump is all going through the music, right? So that's why that's kind of messing up. And then if we go to level 1, we can go to the background music, and this is coming through the sound effects as well. So if we send that through the music, well, you can kind of see that if we go and play now, we have music. I'm not sure how well y'all can hear this in the video, but we do have music. We come here, walking, jump, we mute the sound effects. We no longer can hear us walk. We can no longer hear us jump. We mute the background. We now have no sound whatsoever. We undo the sound effects, and now we just have sound effects. But what if we want our music back? And there we go. So that is kind of how we're going to go about creating sound. That's hopefully a simple tutorial here today on sound, and hopefully you can understand what's going on and how we went about this, and IDs and how to mute things. But of course, if you wanted to maybe turn it down, well, you could do that, because that's going to be set bus volume and set bus volume dB. So we can come up here and we can say set bus volume dB, and you can kind of see how that's going to work there. But this is a complete video on sound, simple, hopefully getting you into the door, hopefully opening up some knowledge and teaching you something you did not know about Godot today. That was my goal, and I hope you learned something about sound to go and implement it into your own game. Of course, it's not going to be super advanced. This is more of a beginner basic tutorial. But if you do have any questions, then please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you, because I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what they're doing, and I want to make sure that this video is helpful and this tutorial is helpful to as many aspiring game developers as it can possibly help. But I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, stay safe and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.